Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
there it goes.
goes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think.
Party started. All right, it's 3 o'clock. It's time for our Measure R meeting. I guess we have enough for a quorum. We have 5 people,
Yep.
so we have enough for a quorum. So let's go see what I guess we'll have a roll call.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay,
Committee Member Jones,
here.
Committee Member Winning,
Here.
Redwine,
Here.
Butler, and Weber.
Right here.
Mr. Shad. Here. And Lopez, here.
Good. Okay. Where did it go? All right. Well, let's go ahead and get down to business. We just got a fiscal report showing what the expenditures are so far, and it looks to me like we've collected and allocated $1,225,000. Is that correct? Under year to date.
Committee Member Jones,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, can we do the agenda in order?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. My
Yeah,
bad.
if you don't mind, yeah.
Okay. All right. We got to review the reports first, I guess, or discuss items related to Measure R. Are there any items to discuss?
I have a couple questions on the reports that were
Okay.
from the different departments. First of all, I think it was really nice of them to take the time out to do these because I know they're very busy. So I just wanted to say thank you. I was curious on the Veterans Services Officer. He wrote a report that there's a legal mandate to provide veterans services. Is that an unfunded mandate from the state?
Yes, it's partially funded.
It's partially
They receive an allocation each year, and I'm not sure if it's based on population or the number of veterans you have in your community, but it's a pretty small allocation considering the cost of the department. I think the annual allocation is about $24,000. Does that sound right, Clint?
Okay.
Yeah. So that doesn't even pay for one staff person.
Right.
Not even
Okay.
probably about a quarter of a staff person with benefits.
And then under the Community Development Department, the Code Enforcement Division, when they do cleaning, let's say they have to tear down a house and they may put a lien on that house to recoup, does that money go back into that specific budget or does it go back into the general fund to be dispersed?
They've actually developed a lien repayment fund, so it's a separate fund. So to make sure that these funds that are collected from liens like that are put back into the program, Code
Okay.
Enforcement Program and Blight, so it doesn't get absorbed by the general fund. Kind of similar to what we did with Measure R by having a separate fund. You can account for it separately.
Okay.
So it's a better way to track those funds when you actually recover something from a blighted
Okay.
property.
And then under the Code Enforcement Division, it talks about they allocated $76,500 and $5,000 was allocated to professional services. I'm kind of curious what the professional services were. if
It was,
you know.
I think they typically budget about $15,000 is all for professional services, and that's just property cleanup, any kind of any kind of properties that they see need to be cleaned up. So they get a very small allocation annually because the funding just hasn't been there in the past. That's one of the things that could be pretty significant change with Measure R, is actually addressing some of these bigger cleanups and having the funding available for it. So the $5,000 was just an additional amount to that original budget that's been the same forever. And so Measure R allowed us to increase that budget a little bit. And I think they may even had to put a little bit of money in there for, in the event they needed to rent equipment, because their department doesn't have a lot of equipment.
Oh.
And if the road department equipment or the parks and maintenance equipment's not available, they need to rent equipment sometimes.
Okay. And then I think my last question, did the animal control officer start on the 13th that was hired?
The
worked out?
supervisor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
That's
They
great.
actually ran a recruitment and promoted from within. Animal control officer Brittany Pratt is now the animal services supervisor. They've hired one other animal control officer. Her name is Billy Joe, and I don't remember her last name. And they just finished recruitments on the third position. So for the first time ever in Delaware County, we'll have 3 animal control dedicated positions, which is, of course, badly needed, as you all know. That's one of our biggest complaints we get for services in this community is animal control.
Are they,
That's all I had.
oh, is that all you have? So that's all through Measure R funds, correct?
The animal supervisor is, yes. The 2 control officers were already in place, so in order not to supplant the budget, we created the new position, which was animal supervisor. They've never had a supervisor of that division. It's always been the department head, which has been a struggle because it's ags, weights and measures, and animal control. So you have an agriculture person who went to school to be a biologist and a scientist running an animal control division, and so having that supervisory position in animal control is going to make that department much more efficient.
Okay.
And that was allowed by Measure R, by creating that position.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about what we got in our emails so far?
Well, we're still on like 2A, right? We're reviewing the county department Measure R reports,
Correct.
correct? Okay, so my question is, I see all the numbers. I see, even looking at them in the budget online, I did that this morning. Things jive number-wise. But there is, how do I want to put this? There is, this verbiage going out there, show me the receipts. How do I confirm what it is that I've read in these reports that somebody spent a lot of time wordsmithing and discussing? Like, for example, you guys have talked about the supervisor of the ag. I see the funds being moved into like the sheriff's department. It shows op transfer. I'm thinking, it's done like via accounts. You guys they have separate accounts, and then the money is just transferred and moved that way. So there's a record of it being done. It's with whoever the banking is, whoever the accounting thing is. But when the money also is being spent by those departments, they're having to submit some sort of documentation in order to do those things, like submitting salary adjustments, submitting requests for hiring a new employee, et cetera, et cetera. How do we access, are we allowed to access, and is the general public allowed to access and look at those things specifically and see the receipts, see that paperwork, that paper trail?
You want to talk about the expenditure side of it?
Yeah. So I can provide that information, that level of detail, to the Oversight Committee or the general public for that matter. It's you tell me what you want to see and what detail you want to see it, and I can absolutely provide that to all of you. We've only met the one other time, so we did the general report for revenue expenditures. But yeah, if we want to dig in there and provide more.
The entire budget, and if somebody's designated to go look at receipts, making, following up on accounting practices, et cetera, and so, I think we ought to probably discuss it first before we start submitting a request asking you what we want.
Yeah, and just something to think about if the Oversight Committee wants to, before the next meeting, give me a heads up on, pick a couple line items even, like spot check a few line items, I can provide that little detail. We can, like I said, we can do it all, or if you want to just do a couple, let me know ahead of time so I can print those off and have it ready for you.
I think what we're looking for here is just like a spot check of the major ones, like probably the sheriff's department, probation department, because that's where the lion's share of the money is going. And I know people are curious about where those funds are going, because during my campaign, that's one of the things that I get asked all the time is, where's the money going? And that makes it, then I have to explain it to them. And if we can just get like a couple of line items, like I know in the report, it showed where we bought three vehicles and we bought another inmate van, you know, that the wheels were falling off of it. You know, something like a little snapshot of like that, I think would probably suffice, don't you think?
Well, and one of the positive events that had taken place during the year is that the sales tax, the regular sales tax that public safety already receives on an annual basis prior to Measure R, their projections were so much higher than they typically had received in the past few years. They transferred those vehicles to the regular sales tax, so Measure R didn't have to pay for those vehicles, which means Measure R's fund balance is going to be that much better moving forward, which is a big deal also.
Yeah, that is
so
a
they
big
were
deal.
able to shift that cost to an actual sales tax increase they weren't expecting under the regular sales tax. So that was actually a huge benefit to Measure R.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So now we have actually, we're going to have actually more of a reserve
Yes.
at the end of the year.
Yes.
Do we know how much that is yet, roughly?
No, we don't. In a positive light, the sales tax collected is surpassing our projection.
Right.
And so I don't have a number that I can throw out.
Well, that's okay.
You might be closer to 1.6, and then it's going to depend on, you know, what our transfers are, our expenditures are. If you look at the sheet I gave you, for example, livestock has 0 transferred for that new position because they just now got it hired. So I have to figure out how much the actual cost is going to be before we transfer the money, and that'll give us an idea on our fund balance.
Right, okay.
Did you have something?
I want to follow up in the same line of questioning. I think it's really exciting that we can ask questions in detail, but I'm always for super transparency. The county does a pretty good job in displaying their numbers on their budget on your internet. Maybe it would be super helpful for the population, since there's quite some angst over the 1% increase, to show on the internet, in public, on how those funds are being spent. I know you can't answer questions on the internet, but you can say, you know what, you're paying, or tourists are paying the 1%, it's an excise tax, so this is what you're getting for it. Because all of those goodies that we're getting from that are partially hidden. And it remains on us to dispel that information. And right now, luckily, with all of this discussion of the new, for the upcoming election, supervisors are being asked, okay, if this repeal goes through, or if there's another repeal, what would you cut? Because we're getting all those quote-unquote nice things. So I think if the public knows what they're getting for it, I think it would make quite a difference.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. We had actually looked into doing a Measure R page on one of our sites and kind of showing and updating as revenue was received and expenditures were made, trying to update that. It's just been capacity where we haven't had the staff to get that done yet, but it is something we're planning to do, just so it is more transparent and people can see the actual funding coming in and going out.
Yeah,
and some of the other thing was that it's been such a delay in hiring some of these positions. A lot of the funds that were budgeted for these positions, not being able to fill them, of course, will stay in general fund or the Measure R also, as far as the fund balance going forward. But the expenditures are quite a bit lower than we anticipated because of filling these positions.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we had like a little blip on our county website that just says Measure R funding, or, you know, or something to that effect. And I don't think it has to be updated every day, but I think if it is updated like maybe, once a month maybe, or once every 2 weeks.
We can update some of that stuff pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think that way we can have a way of being transparent, because I know people are I still get asked, that money goes into the general fund, and I go, no, it doesn't. I said, it goes to general funded positions, but it's not from the general, it doesn't get in, it doesn't melt into the general fund itself.
So I have a question. So if you have the money from Measure R, I'll say it has its own cost center number for that money, and you have somebody in their probation department, and part of their salary is from the general fund, and then you say, okay, out of Measure R, we're gonna give you a 3% raise. So do you pay them and then evaluate what that 3% is and pull that money from Measure R, or how do you manage that money for that 3% out of Measure R cost center?
So how we're doing that is, we started off the year with how we're doing that is we started off the year with the budgetary transfer, so like 25%, and then fourth quarter we do our annual true-up, which will be pulling the individual person by detail and figuring out the exact amounts. I'm gonna change that starting next year, where we're gonna do that for every single position, every single time, so there won't be a true-up at the end of the year. It'll be trued up as we go, which I think will go a long way for showing our expenditures. But yeah, so let's say if you were the employee and 4% was going to be funded by Measure R, I would pull out of our payroll system what your costs were, and then take 4% of that and transfer Measure R to cover it.
Okay, thank you.
I think we can show that, that'll go a lot for transparency. I think that'll show a lot for the transparency.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
agree.
something, I don't think it'd be that hard to do. I mean,
No, as far as Mr. Lopez said, they're already working on a website.
Right.
Right now, if the public, and it takes a few steps, but if they go into our county website and go into our online budget lookup, you can click on Measure R and you'll see what's been brought in, in real time and what's been spent. It's not as easy as going to the county homepage and having, a button you click. You
Yeah.
actually have to go to the budget page, look up Measure R. It's there, but like you said, it's not exactly.
yeah, and that's what makes it difficult for people to extrapolate the information that they want. And like I say, I don't think we need to have it updated every day, but I think if it's updated twice a month maybe, or once a month,
Well, that system, the budget system is updated in real time automatically, so if we tie it to that, then
Oh, if it's tied to that, then
it'll
that's even
just
better, yeah.
happen automatically. If you were to go in right now to one of our budgets and look at it, you're gonna see as of today. what's
Yeah, because
happening.
I printed up just before I got here what you then handed out to us, and I was just comparing them, and they're the same numbers, so.
Yeah, I printed this out at 2:34 today, yeah, it's real
and I
time.
did it about this, I did it about 15 minutes before that, so.
Yeah.
So like David was mentioning, I'm going over the report from the sheriff's office when I was asking about if we were able to see documents, and you were asking what we would like. In the, the third paragraph where it says specifically the Measure R funds budgeted, and then it gives examples of the patrol staff, jails staff, dispatch staff. If there's documents related to that in your office, those are some that we would like to see.
Yeah, I would have all of
Okay.
the detail. I don't know, we'll look into it. I don't know if all the detail's public with individual employees, but
Okay,
as far
so
as
like,
but the numbers
Well,
would be.
I think it's just the positions.
Yeah.
yeah, let me give you an
That kind of
example. I worked for the state of California, and I saw the documents when I was negotiating as a union person. I would be able to see the documents where they created a position and/or absorbed it, moved it to another area, I'm, for lack of memory, I love being retired. I can't remember, they actually just have a form name for it, similar to what I'm seeing in your guys' accounting, where you guys have, departments by number, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, really, it's just seeing the county document where the position was created and/or where the salaries or adjustments are made.
Sure, yeah, I can provide that pretty easily. Like I said, The Oversight Committee, you can ask for all of it, or you can do some spot checks. It's up to you, whichever you prefer. I can provide that.
I think we just need spot checks, don't you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to have,
Yes, maybe for our next meeting, on one of the agenda items, we'll just say, and, provide detail for
sheriff's department.
patrol,
one,
jail,
patrol.
dispatch,
Yeah.
whatever you want to see.
Well,
No
let's-
problem.
Yeah, let's do that with the sheriff's department for a start, okay?
Sure.
Patrol, that kind of thing, just for a start, just so we can see.
Yeah, not a problem.
I don't think we need to have spot checks on everything at this point, do we? Because I think that,
Already overwhelmed.
well, yeah, but I'm just saying, that way we won't get too overwhelmed. We'll just have one thing that we can spot check.
Yeah.
That way, I mean, we're already pretty transparent. This is one of the most transparent counties I've ever seen, so.
And just to briefly touch on the way positions are created, it depends on if it's a brand-new position. The animal services supervisor position didn't exist until Measure R, and so we work with the department head to create a draft of the position. And typically, they'll use like the animal control services officer to start with that job, and then say, what would a supervisor look of this position? What would they do? What would they be responsible for as far as scheduling and those types of things, oversight and decisions made on seizures and investigations and whatever else. So you add that supervisory level to that job description. You then send it to the recognized bargaining group, whether it's mid-management or SEIU, let them review it to make sure they're okay with the new position, and then we take it to the board to approve the new job description and add it to the staffing chart. If it's a position that already exists, like code enforcement, and you're just adding an additional one, what you do is go back to the board and just ask them to add an additional allocation for that same position, so you don't have to do a whole new job description.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm curious about, because I think one of the things that a lot of people voted yes on this was they just really read about maintaining and updating our roads and stuff. And we really haven't heard anything about how Measure R has impacted that. I see a lot of complaints and pictures about roads. I don't even know if they're in the city or the county. But I think that's why a lot of people voted for it, is because they really wanted to see those county road improvements. And, but I haven't really seen anything other than the position, so.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that where we need to establish a fund balance in order to address those things, because doing a capital project like that is very costly. And so when this year during the fiscal year 21-22 budget, not knowing what kind of revenue we would receive, we basically projected it. I think we set aside $479,000 for capital improvements, which really, if you get into any size road, maybe one or two roads. And so I think the developing a fund balance and then maybe leveraging other money as a match with Measure R is going to be the best use of those funds. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the roads that we've been hearing complaints about are the non-county maintained roads, and they're private roads. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes into that by using public resources for private roads, who maintains them. So there's a lot of legal issues also and liability issues that we have to address before we move forward with something like that. So the intent is to use Measure R to improve our capital infrastructure also, but developing a fund balance so we have enough funding to do that. Because then you're picking and choosing. There's probably, many, many roads in this community that everybody would say my road first. And so you have to have some kind of a plan in place for a priority list, and then having the board give us direction on how they want to spend those funds. But the funds are there. They haven't gone anywhere. That's the best information we can provide to the public right now, is those funds are building a fund balance in that fund, and they're not going anywhere. And they're easy for Clint at any time to have anybody walk in and say, show me how much money is in Measure R, and you can see the revenue that has come in there, less the expenditures, and that's the total balance in that fund right now. So that's the good thing about it, is it's not mixed in with a bunch of other funds like we've stated many times. So yeah, that is the intent, and that's definitely something that's still on our priority list. It's just establishing those funds.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I got a question then. The federal government and the state have funding for roads that's out there. Do we get any of that money for resurfacing? Any of that money for road resurfacing?
Yes, we get quite a bit of, our entire roads division is state and federal funded.
Right.
So we get a lot of SB1 money.
Right.
But Mr. Lopez said, I think as far as resurfacing goes, it still falls under the plan of attack for which roads on that priority list.
Yeah, but my question is there any other funds that can be out there with the Measure R funding that we get to get matching funds? Like a matching grant that kind of thing? Is there stuff out there that we can?
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody noticed in today's board agenda, we actually created a grant writer position.
Yeah, I know, I saw that.
That's the first grant writer position we've had in this county since I've been here. I've been here for 22 years. And so definitely a positive step in the right direction to have somebody focused on grant funding for this community and for the county. And that's one of the things they're going to be focused on, is developing priorities through the Board of Supervisors and then trying to use some of these funds for match, which we didn't have in the past. You know, when you look at general fund match in the past, if it was 10 or 20%, and you're looking at, you know, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million, we didn't have those funds, which is why it's so important to establish some kind of reserve in some of these, in the Measure R stuff. If you can use $1 million to capture $5 or $10 million, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so the grant writer was originally thought to be a Measure R position also, but we just went ahead and established it because it's so important. If Measure R is repealed, then we're going to keep that position. It's just too critical, and hopefully it pays for itself, you know, by getting grant funding.
It will.
And so,
It will. Then another.
oh, just so you, the IT person that just whispered in my ear was stating if everybody could speak directly in the microphone because they're having some sound issues, so even if you have to pull your microphone a little bit closer.
Also, along the lines of roads, I understand that we have our own crews to go out and do road repair. Can't we let those guys go out and do pothole repair? And if they're doing pothole repair, where are they doing it?
Yeah, that would really be a question for the CDD director
Okay.
and the superintendent of roads. I don't really know what the road priority list looks like. I do know, once again, and honestly, I know people get tired of hearing it, and we get tired of saying it, that they're massively understaffed, again, like every other department.
Well, yeah, I understand that,
And-
but I also.
I do think they develop a road inventory that is prioritized each year, and they hit them as they can.
Okay,
But yeah,
good.
that is,
Yeah, because I understand from one of my friends that used to work over there that if the projects are over like $65,000, then they have to go out to bid. And I'm just thinking if there's smaller projects that our crews can do that is under that, why don't we have them go and try and tackle some of those? You know, some of the smaller repairs, you know. They just maybe be able to use some of the Measure R funding to help cover some of those costs. I know they're understaffed, but
yeah,
But that would
unfortunately,
be-
the roads is actually one of the funds that does have a significant amount of money that goes towards them for road repairs. So it's a special revenue fund. It's similar to how Measure R is set up. It's in its own fund. And so all the road-related funds, gas users tax and SB1 funds and stuff like that all go into SRS funds that are dedicated to the road fund, all go into a single fund
Okay.
also, which is, it's nice. They've been able to, you know, to actually establish a pretty good fund balance in that fund.
okay. Do we have any other questions? Anybody else have any questions? No? All righty then. All right. All right, so I guess we're done with the review of the county Measure R reports. Anybody else have any questions on the reports? Okay. Now we're going to discuss the committee's Measure R report to the Board of Supervisors, and 1, determine the method of delivery for the report, either written or oral, and designate 1 of the 5 voting committee members as the spokesman for the committee to be present during the board meeting at which the report is presented. Okay. I think we should present it to the board. We can give them the paperwork that we get, but I think it should be read into the minutes of the board instead of them just saying, okay, here's Measure R, because that's just another level of transparency, I think. That way everybody knows what's going on, and there's no hidden agenda that they can say that we're doing something funny.
While I agree with you, how are we going to facilitate this?
Well, that's the
My
question.
thought is that it should be a written report,
Right.
and then whoever's going to present it just reads the report. That way it's entered into the minutes. So
Well, that's pretty much what.
who's going to write the report?
Well, everybody's looking at me.
Well, I'm looking at everybody. I'm looking at everybody, not just you.
I can write the
So-
report, that's not a problem.
And then you could send it to all of us
Yeah, I can email it to you, everybody.
via
and they can
email,
review
and
it.
then we can give our input.
Yeah, and review it, and then we can go forward from there.
changes, et cetera.
Yeah. I think we could have most of that done by our next meeting, when we determine that, when that is. And then, do you guys want me to make the presentation, or or somebody else want to do it?
I think you'd be excellent at it, so. But I think it might be a good idea for us all to be there.
I think so, too.
As a group.
As a group. That way they know that we're unified in our report. I think that
I
would be-
agree.
I think that's good. That way we're all unified. That way they can see that we're all backing it.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody has a Gmail account, but you can do Google Docs where everybody has access to the document and can make edits and it shows their name. Sometimes that's an easy way
I don't have
to
Google
do it.
Docs.
Okay, so then it's just better to email
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah,
Okay,
for me, it's easier.
Okay.
I got an old Yahoo account.
okay.
Well, you
That'll work.
can, you can still use the Google Docs, and it can be created there, and then it'll just be sent to your email
Oh,
as
see,
a share.
I'll-
So if
I'll
you
look
would
it up.
like, I'll create the document, I'll send everybody the link, and we'll go
Okay.
from there.
That'll work.
Because it's
All
a
right.
really easy way to
All right, that-
edit the
yeah,
document.
no, that's fine.
Yes, because then it's even more visually, you can see the changes as
Right.
opposed to the way Word
Right.
Word does it, yeah. 'cause
Yeah.
I've never
document
been-
does you would do a track changes and.
Yeah, I know.
And then that gets confusing as all heck.
Yep.
So- No, that sounds good. Fine, I'm up
All
for
right,
it.
I'll create it and I'll send everybody the share.
That's fine. That way.
No problem here.
No, that way, that's great. That way we can all edit it, and that way we know what's going on.
All right.
All right, that
So-
sounds good.
When is the next Board of Supervisors that we would plan on being there?
Per the resolution, this report would need to be done on June 28th.
Okay.
It's when the recommended budget is adopted.
June 28th, okay.
All right, and this is May 25th.
About a month.
So, yeah. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have, I think we should have another meeting before the 28th, so we can get the documents. They don't have to be 100% done, I think, but we should be able to get something.
For the agenda, the document would have to be done on the 21st and submitted to the clerk of the board. It's a week before. And there's a little bit of wiggle room there sometimes, depending on when she plans on posting the final agenda. Because Clint and I will be developing the recommended budget at that time also for the entire county. So we have a spending authority as of July 1.
Okay.
So do we send it to Kylie then? Is that who it
Yes.
goes to?
Yes, please include Clint and I with anything that's
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
sent. And just, I don't know if you need this as a reference of what the report is, kind of like a guide of what it's addressing. In the resolution, it has kind of the three questions.
questions.
That you guys will be answering through your report. So I'm assuming you have that. If you don't, if you need any more information from the reports or from me, just please let me know during the process.
Okay. So, so now we got to figure out when we're going to have our next meeting.
So actually, let me take a vote real quick here. If we can do a consensus vote for all of those that are in favor of doing the report both written and then presented orally by Committee Member Jones, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And seeing none. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, the 21st is the Tuesday after Father's Day.
Do we want to do item C real quick?
Yeah, okay.
Committee Member Jones, and have.
Let's do item C, that's fiscal year revenue and expenditures date, update. And that's what this sheet is.
Yeah, so the sheet I provided right before the meeting, that's going to be our year-to-date revenue expenditures. The expenditures, we're doing quarterly transfers currently, so the next one will be posted at the end of June, for the end of June, the fourth quarter of our fiscal year. But the revenue comes in on a monthly basis. So as the state sends us our portion of our county sales tax, it gets posted automatically, and the interest earned on that money gets posted quarterly as well. So,
Okay.
I'm not planning to make another adjustment to our any of our transfers until the end of the fiscal year. For the final transfer with all of the detail, we can get that in a true up to actual. I hadn't planned on making one this month, May, just with June 30 close out of the year, I'd make our final fourth quarter transfer.
When are you going to do that? At the very end of the month?
So I'll have to wait until July, because we're going to have some payroll that overlaps into July, like actual pay days in July, but the days were worked in June. So then I have to get those final numbers and make my posting.
Okay, so that's going to make it kind of tough for us to get exact numbers to put into our report.
Yeah, I won't have exact, I mean, it's not, I mean, to have them by the 21st, people are still working, that's going to be drawing down these funds. So
Right.
I won't have final by then.
Well, I think as long as we're close, yeah, as long as we're close at this point, because it's a living budget. I mean, it's fluctuating all the time, so we're not going to be able to give them anything other than a snapshot at when we do it, so.
A year-to-date situation.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah, I think just give them the year-to-date will be fine for that, as long as we can get it fairly close.
And one of the, the key points of the resolution is, one, was it spent on vital services, in your opinion? Two, was it supplanting any other funds? And so that's kind of the key focus of the report. Then you can do year-to-date expenditures, but in the resolution, it does state, the committee may, at its discretion, meet again after the end of the fiscal year, which Clint is talking about. He'll have done his final entry at that point, and prior to the adoption of the final budget, which is at the end of September, and you may update its findings if necessary. So you can do another report prior to the final budget also.
That might not
And-
be a bad idea to do, too. That way we can give them the spot check for June, for the beginning of the budget.
And then you'd have the final numbers for the
have the
entire
final
fiscal year.
numbers for the
And the
year.
budget
That
for the
makes
following
sense.
fiscal year.
That makes sense. That way we can meet after the, we can meet in, mid-August, late July, mid-August. That way you'll have time to get all the numbers put together.
Yes, what I'll try to do is, what I will do is I'll do a year-to-date, the first part of June, and do all that true up then. So we'll be year-to-date for your report, and the only thing missing would probably be that last pay period.
Okay, that sounds.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
That makes the best sense.
So I'll do a cleanup, like, I don't want to say cleanup, that's not, but I'll do a year-to-date, beginning of June, all the actuals, put them in there for your report, and then
Okay.
we'll just be, depending on how the calendar falls, it might be 2 pay periods shy for the full year, but it could be just the one.
Okay.
So
That
you'll
sounds
have a
good.
real close number.
Okay, no, that's fine, as long as we know it's not going to be accurate because it's not the end of the year. So we just have to give them what we can with what we got. When do you think you'll have that done? Because I'm looking at my June calendar right now.
Well, I just made a note to do that. So
Okay.
I will,
I'm just trying to think, I'm just trying to figure out when we can meet again and get our reports together, so when we meet, we have our reports pretty
so
well together.
we'll be getting paid, countywide payroll will be next week. So I'd like to get that pay date in these numbers, so it'll have to be the week after that.
Okay, so that would be what, the week of the 6th?
So we'll get paid on, what's next Friday, the 5th, 4th?
Friday's the 3rd.
So we paid on the 3rd so that I can come back in on the 6th and pull those numbers and get us as
Okay.
close as possible.
All right, so then we could, what do you think, the 9th? That would be Thursday? You could get them out to us by then? Would
Yeah.
that be enough time to get?
Yep, I can, I'll make a note to put on my calendar, and as soon as I get them done, I'll just print off a new revenue expense report, and we'll send to everybody on the board.
Okay, that would be great, because then we could probably meet the week after that, which would be the 13th to the 17th of June. Flag Day is the 14th. So, I don't know if you guys have it, how your calendars are yet. Do you want to make a date now? Would that be the easiest?
No. Because I'm really thinking
General
we're
feelings
going to be able to work on this document via Google.
Well, yeah.
And we'll be able to communicate via email.
Right.
So I'm not really sure that it's going to be necessary for us to get back together and look at each other's faces to say, hey, you're going to read this report that we created online.
Well, I think we need, well, we could probably, unless you want to vote on it, yeah, we can vote on it through, through
Yeah.
Gmail. We can do that, too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's do
Problem,
that then.
yeah.
We'll just do that.
No, we're just going to have your name on it.
I know. That won't be, it's not the first time I've had my name on them, on something. So, well, I'm sure it won't be the last. But, no, that's fine.
If you guys are collaborating on the if you collaborate on the creation anyway through a Google Docs, then it's going to be a document from all of you anyway.
Yeah, it's gonna be from all of us anyway, so that's not an issue, so. All right, so what we'll do then is we'll look for the week of the 6th, I'll say, for the numbers.
Yeah, I should be able to get that done,
'Cause that's,
barring anything weird.
well, yeah, well, I'm just
On
saying.
the Monday, the 6th, get them done, get it posted.
Okay, if you could do that, that would be awesome, because
And
that'll
then
give
we
us a
can-
little more time.
We can print out right then. And like I said, it won't be 100% accurate because I'll have a few more pay periods to go, but it's going to be within, 95% of
Well, yeah,
final
and
number.
then, yeah, and then we can give them the final numbers at the end of,
Yeah. Right.
July, first part of August, before they do
Yeah.
their final
Yeah, I can do that.
vote on the
Yeah,
budget.
I,
that
I
way.
understand it will
Yeah.
be accurate, but it will not be complete.
Right.
Perfect.
Accurate but
Yep.
incomplete.
Very well said.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so,
One thing I'd like to point out, just so the committee understands that, the repeal is on the ballot for November. From a budget perspective, we honestly have to budget as if it's going to be repealed. So for fiscal year 22-23, we may run two budgets by saying that if it's repealed in November, this is what it's going to look like, and this is all we can fund through November. If it's not, we'll try to also run a full fiscal year budget, just so we have that, in hopes that people understand what we're doing with this is critical and that we are supporting vital services. So just to let you know that, to make you aware of that, is that we have to, from a prudent standpoint, to actually consider that it may be repealed in November.
Now, making me think of a question of, if the repeal is successful, how soon do you stop collecting the money? I mean, when does it go into effect? Does it go into effect in January, or does it go into effect immediately if it's repealed?
That I'm not certain about. I'd have to ask council to look into it, or ask Elisa, the clerk recorder.
Oh, okay.
Elections, yeah, I'm not certain about that.
well, they only had that one that really was kind of a foie dougal. The repeal. Have they put a second one forth yet?
Yes, they have.
Oh, they have. They got the signatures for it?
And there will be two of them on the ballot, the one that doesn't mean anything and the one that does.
And that's isn't that
Well,
great?
as long as the public knows what they're giving up,
Well, that's why I think.
they'll have to make a decision.
That's why I think if we can get it on the website, that'll be critical.
And it'll be a goal of mine that each opportunity I get through the budget process to mention Measure R and what it's done for its community, what it's going to continue to do. So it'll be a focus of mine also.
Yeah, because like I say, while I've been campaigning, I've been telling people all about it. And because people don't know. I mean, 2/3 of the people that I've talked to, they're like, well, what's Measure R? And then I explain it to them, they're like, oh, well, I saw one of those new squad cars running around the road. That's your Measure R money.
Well, and Clint and I have stated this in the past also. If you guys have anybody that approaches you that has questions that you feel like you're not able to answer, then my door is always open. They can come and talk to me or Clint at any time, and I'd be happy to sit down and explain it to them. Even a group of people.
Yeah, like I said, I've been telling them, and people have been very receptive to it when I tell them what's going on. Especially when they find out that with code enforcement, they've doubled code enforcement, and nobody realized, I didn't even realize how many cases they get a year. That's ridiculous. That's 1.5 cases a day, 7 days a week, which is a lot for a small community like this.
Yeah, the demand on services for the staffing levels is pretty overwhelming.
And, when they hear that, they're like, oh, okay. So, okay. We don't have any public, so no public comment. I know. Is there anything else that we need to cover while we're here? Do we have any other questions? Anything? Anything that's related to Measure R that we need to discuss? No? Well, I guess we can adjourn the meeting.
All right, thank
And-
you all.
Well, I guess before we leave, I should say that we will, if we don't see each other again, we'll see each other on the June 28th meeting. with the Board of Supervisors, but we'll be talking before then. We'll be communicating online before then.
peaks don't rise.
Well, yeah, Klamath River don't rise for me. All right,